In this video, I'll review concepts from Chapter 25 of Human Anatomy and Physiology, 11th edition. This chapter focuses on the urinary system. In particular, we'll be looking more closely at the process of glomerular filtration. Glomerular filtration is a passive process, and it has a size limit based on the porousness of these fenestrated capillaries, as well as this visceral membrane of the glomerular capsule. Glomerular filtration is driven most by hydrostatic pressure. So that's the pressure of blood within this glomerulus, within these capillaries. So it's fed, the glomerulus is fed by the afferent arterial, and it drains into the efferent arterial, which you can see here is going to be a smaller diameter. And what that basically means is that the incoming arterial is going to have a lower resistance. So that's going to allow lots of blood in, which then gets backed up, raising the pressure within these capillaries. Molecules less than 3 nanometers, which is very small, much smaller than a cell, are going to easily pass through this membrane into the glomerular capsule and onto the renal tubules. Examples of molecules like this, glucose, amino acids, nitrogenous waste, so things like urea, uric acid, easily going to pass into the renal filtrate. Cells and most proteins even can't get through very easily. There is no reabsorption happening here in the glomerular capsule. So lots of hydrostatic pressure pushing fluids and small molecules out into the renal filtrate. That's glomerular filtration. In order to become filtrate, in order to pass through, these fluids and other molecules need to go through 3 different layers. So from the blood to the glomerular capsule, the substances are going to pass first through fenestrated capillary endothelium, so that's shown here. So it's fenestrated, lots of pores, then through the basement membrane, and then finally through, or in between, the feet of those podocytes. So remember, that's the visceral side of the glomerular capsule. Once passing through all of these, that's the filtrate. It has been filtered. So it's the fluids, the other substances have moved through these 3, and the filtrate is then present in the glomerular capsule. There are 3 processes that contribute to net filtration. So one that I mentioned is hydrostatic pressure. So this is typically the major force. So the glomerular blood pressure is that hydrostatic pressure. So I'll remind you that the pressure within the glomerulus, this is a high pressure capillary bed. So lots of hydrostatic pressure pushing substances from the blood into the filtrate. So this is usually dominant. However, there is a capsule pressure, so hydrostatic pressure of the capsule, and it provides some pressure in the opposite direction, some force in the opposite direction. Then finally, there is blood osmotic pressure. So because of all those proteins that get left behind in the blood, there's a more osmotic pressure in the blood than in the filtrate. So overall, these are going to add up to equal the net filtration pressure. Again, under normal conditions, the net pressure is going to be outward, so that hydrostatic pressure is going to dominate, and on net, you're going to have movement of substances, fluids from the blood into the glomerular capsule. The speed at which that happens is going to be called the glomerular filtration rate. So this is going to be the volume of filtrate formed per minute by the kidneys. And typically this is about 120 milliliters per minute. And net filtration pressure is what's going to contribute to that. So say if the hydrostatic pressure goes up, or I'll go back here, if this glomerular hydrostatic pressure increases, or let's say that the capillary osmotic pressure or the capsule hydrostatic pressure decrease, you're suddenly going to get a higher glomerular filtration rate. So net filtration pressure contributes to that. Glomerular filtration rate is often abbreviated GFR. So GFR is going to be directly proportional, as I mentioned, to net filtration pressure, as well as the total surface area available for filtration. So more nephrons basically means more GFR or higher GFR. And finally, the membrane permeability is of that filtration membrane, so the glomerulus and the surrounding podocytes, is going to directly impact the GFR. Glomerular filtration rate is regulated by 4 mechanisms, and all are going to relate to changes in the capillary pressure. So as the capillary pressure increases, you're going to see increased net filtration pressure, and that's going to lead to increased glomerular filtration rate. If you see the capillary pressure decrease, you'll pretty quickly see the glomerular filtration rate drop to 0. So even if that capillary pressure drops by 18%, so less than 20%, you'll see the glomerular filtration rate drop to 0. This is why it's incredibly important to regulate the pressure of the blood in the afferent arteriole, the efferent arteriole, as well as in the glomerulus itself. So there are intrinsic controls. This is direct control of glomerular filtration rate. These are known as myogenic. So myogenic would be controls by the afferent arteriole, and tubuloglomerular. And so that would be the macula densa that is providing feedback and helping to adjust glomerular filtration rate. And then we also have extrinsic controls. So this would be indirect control through regulation of blood pressure. So in this case, it would be neural, so sympathetic regulation of net filtration pressure, and hormonal. And this is mainly through the renin and angiotensin system, which we'll talk about more later. So let's look more closely at the myogenic control of glomerular filtration rate. This is going to be in response to high blood pressure, and myogenic control would restrict blood flow into the glomerulus. So if blood pressure is too high, myogenic control means those muscles are going to constrict and reduce flow into the glomerulus. And this is going to help to protect the glomeruli from high blood pressure, from those damaging effects. So here we have the stimulus is high blood pressure. The afferent arteriole smooth muscle is going to get activated by stretch. That's going to cause the arteriole, the afferent arteriole, to vasoconstrict, which is going to reduce the blood flow into the glomerulus and therefore reduce the glomerular blood pressure back to normal, hopefully. The myogenic response to low pressure is just the opposite of all of this. So lower blood pressure is going to lead to dilation of the afferent arteriole. So next we get tubuloglomerular control of glomerular filtration rate. And again, this is response to the salt concentration in the filtrate. So in this case, we can have it respond to either increased or decreased salt concentration. So in this case, we have the stimulus is glomerular filtration rate that's maybe a little too high. And so that is going to, if it's too high, it's increasing the filtrate flow rate. That's going to increase the amount of sodium chloride that is going to be exposed to the macula densa. So when too much sodium chloride is passing the macula densa, that macula densa will release vasoconstrictors that cause the afferent arteriole to constrict. That's going to lower the glomerular filtration rate, which is going to increase the ability for the tubules to reabsorb sodium chloride. That's then going to reduce the amount of sodium chloride that is passing the macula densa and return us back to set point. So macula densa is the structure that is most involved in this tubuloglomerular control. Next, we get neural control. So if the blood pressure overall in the body decreases, we have less stimulation of baroreceptors. That's going to increase the release of norepinephrine by sympathetic nerve fibers, and that's going to cause vasoconstriction in the periphery. That includes afferent arterial vasoconstriction. So this should be now a running theme. You can see all of these have eventually led to vasoconstriction in the afferent arteriole, which is regulating the amount of blood which is able to pass into the glomerulus. So in this case, again, reduce glomerular filtration rate, and the overall blood pressure then hopefully increases. So this is only going to occur if the blood pressure is extremely low. So remember, it is vitally important that blood flows into your kidneys. And so this would only be a last effort by your body to try and restore blood pressure. Your body is in really bad shape if it's shutting down, even slightly, if it's shutting down blood flow into the kidneys. And then finally, we have hormonal control. It's going to involve two different effects of the renin-angiotensin system. So as blood pressure decreases, so this is only occurring if blood pressure or blood volume are low. So as blood pressure decreases, the granular cells, which are part of that juxtaglomerular complex, remember they're the smooth muscle cells, some of the smooth muscle cells lining the afferent arteriole, they're now going to start secreting renin. The renin is then going to travel through the blood to the lungs, and cells within the lungs will produce another hormone called angiotensin II. And that angiotensin II is going to do two different things. One, it's going to stimulate aldosterone release, yet another hormone, aldosterone release from the adrenal cortex. Or two, the angiotensin II can lead directly to peripheral vasoconstriction. So first, the aldosterone. The aldosterone will then travel through the blood back to the kidneys, and it will cause increased reabsorption of salt. So more salt, more water will come back into the blood and hopefully help to raise that blood pressure again. That will increase the blood volume, again, hopefully increase the blood pressure. The angiotensin II effect on vasoconstriction, so increased vasoconstriction, and now hopefully again the blood pressure increases back to normal. All right, so I'll just repeat this a little bit. So there are two different effects of angiotensin II that are going to lead to increased blood pressure. One is an effect up here. It's going to affect filtration. So as angiotensin II is being produced, it's going to cause constriction of this afferent arteriole, and there will be less glomerular filtration. So now the blood is going to stay in the blood. So all the fluid stays in the blood. Additionally, number two, the second effect of angiotensin II is increased aldosterone. And that is going to act on the renal tubules, where it's going to increase salt as well as water reabsorption into the blood. So we're doing everything we can to prevent even more water from being lost from the blood. I'll leave you with this question. What is the most important contributor to net filtration pressure, and therefore to glomerular filtration rate? And as a bonus question, all of the following can be direct responses to decreased blood pressure except which of the following?